Yeah, good afternoon. Here we are in the 14th final game in last year's World Chess Championship between Ding Liren, who here has the white pieces, and Domaraju Gukesh, who has the black pieces. They're known as Ding and Gukesh. And it's the 14th of 14 scheduled games, and the scores are completely even. Uh, yeah, 6.5 points each. So if the game is a draw and the championship is a draw, they will play a rapid and blitz playoff. And most people, probably including Gukesh, think that Ding is a better rapid and blitz player than Gukesh. And that can well be the case. So Gukesh has an interest in it not being a draw, but it ends up being a fairly drawish opening, a fairly drawish middle game, and a completely drawish end game. Let's see what happens. Knight f3, e5, d5 even, the Reti opening, King's Indian attack signalled with g3. Not the King's Indian defence when black does it, it's King's Indian defence. When white does it, it's the King's Indian attack. Yeah, the move f4, e4 is played at some time. It's formation King's Indian attack, an old favourite of Fisher's. But Gukesh plays c5, the Sicilian variation, because the pawn's moved to c6, c5 like it would in the Sicilian. The bishop develops, the knight develops, the pawn comes to d4, and he plays the pawn to e6 to defend the c5 pawn with the bishop, and it now becomes the French variation because the pawn is where it would be in a French defense. Okay, e4 hasn't happened yet, but we're all kind of just assuming that it's coming along at some point in time. So the pawn is swapped off, knight takes, and he doubles up. Instead of taking the knight first, he doubles up his knight, so he's got another knight to come to c6 if necessary. Pawn comes to c4, and the knight is taken now, taken back by the queen, and the knight comes to c6. Pawn goes to d4, he's hoping to hold that pawn in the middle. As it is, he's a majority of pawns in the centre and on the king side against the majority of pawns on the queen side. Pawn comes to e3, bishop comes to c5 to support it. It's taken anyway. Bishop takes, and the knight comes out. And now we have a clearer, more defined majority. 4 against 3 for Gukesh on the king side. 3 against 2 for Ding Liren on the queen side. Gukesh castles, and the knight comes to b5, threatening the f7 square and the bishop on d4. So bishop comes to b6, offering a queen trade. Ding plays his pawn to get the bishop to fianchetto the bishop. Fianchetto the bishop, saying, yeah, if you can have a queen swap if you want, but you take. Neither of them really wants to take. The knight's chased away, and the knight comes to c3. Bishop comes to d4 to attack the knight, and the bishop defends the knight. Pawn comes to e5 to attack to defend the bishop, and the queen is now off the second rank, off the first rank, and white is officially finished with developments. Bishop comes to e6, and white's a move away from being finished. Queen to c7, e7, d7, all finish development and signal a middle game. The knight comes to d5, and the pawn comes to b5. Hoping to undermine this knight. Obviously he can't take, otherwise, well, he's not going to lose a piece yet, because he gets the pawn back here. So yeah, he could take, and he does take, and he takes with the pawn, not with the bishop. It would end up playing two dark square bishops against one another, and it would be a purer kingside pawn majority versus queenside pawn majority kind of finish. So Gukesh tries to keep something alive and interesting in the game. The pawn is taken, the knight is taken on f4, and the bishop takes, threatening the rook. The bishop takes, threatening the rook, and the queen takes. The bishop plays to b8, and the rook threatens the queen, who comes to b6, and the bishop retreats. He doesn't really want to take this pawn and ruin the structure of his majority. He would rather have his opponent take it. And Gukesh obliges Ding. This is completely even according to the engine, and it is an even, but there are advantages and disadvantages for both sides. It's worth the fight, and Gukesh certainly doesn't give up. Gukesh, Ding plays a4, creating a passed pawn, but obviously he can't let Ding have a supported passed pawn, so he takes on, pass on, and now the bishop, queen, and rook all attack the pawn. But he doesn't really want to play bishop here, Jack, because the rook will come here and threaten the bishop, then be able to come here and threaten the bishop again, threaten the rook. Rooks must be swapped off, and it's just a move too early to take that rook. So he gives his king an escape square whilst taking away important squares for the light squared bishop. Very smart. A queen trade is offered. No thanks, says Gukesh. And no, it is really difficult to defend this pawn. He might well be in a position to take it, and if he comes here to pin, he can play bishop here and try and swap off the queens and therefore get away with the pawn. So he comes to b4, where it's twice attacked and only once defended. So Gukesh goes a pawn up, but it is a completely even game, and the evaluation bar hardly moves at all. Pair of rooks are swapped off, and great move by Gukesh. Puts the pawn on a dark square where it's not seen by the bishop, and gives more space to his own king. Right. Offers a bishop trade. Gukesh says no thank you. Rook comes to c1. Maybe he's aiming for the f7 square, getting a battery on the f7 square. King comes to g7, and the battery on the f7 square is indeed formed. Bishop comes to g6, where it defends the f7 pawn. No more pressure can be put on it, so it won't be getting swapped off. He offers a queen trade of rooks. No thanks, says Gukesh, I want to play on. And the king comes to g2. The rook comes to e1. Yeah, might as well stand on a good open file. Doesn't make much difference, really. Yeah, little queenside to kingside expansion. The bishop is threatened and comes to f3. King comes to h6. Great. He keeps fighting, and he keeps all his pieces beautifully compact and together. Yeah, it's just some maneuvering now, and this maneuvering allows Gukesh to advance the pawn, but it's still a dead draw. But you've got to get the draw. It's alright saying the evaluation bar says this game is a dead draw. You've got to find the 20 next correct moves in the amount of time you've got allotted. Both were beginning to get short on time. Ding worse, so Ding in the whole match really poor use of time and often ended up in time trouble, which Gukesh exploited. Something he'd learned from Magnus, certainly. Genius at exploiting time trouble of his opponents. So, he wants to have a swap off. Obviously, if he takes this pawn now, Gukesh, then his two pawns are split and they're much more difficult to advance. So, he keeps the pawns together with f5. It's taken and he takes towards the centre. Yeah, great. Bishop comes to f7. King moves, check. King comes to f6, keeping the pieces together, crucially. King goes back. Bishop comes out. He could have just played king here and gone for a more kind of offered a draw there. Probably wouldn't have taken it. Rook comes to b2 and attacks the bishop. The bishop comes to a8. This turns out to be a fatally bad square, but only after Gukesh has made a final error. King comes to f6, good square. Rook comes to f4, king comes to e5 and threatens the rook. And there's the fatal error. Rook comes to f2. And now we see how poor the positioning of the bishop on a8 is, because Gukesh swaps off the rooks, and now he plays bishop to d5. Had the bishop been on a7 or d6, d6 would have lots of retreating squares, a7 it would have 2 squares where it could go. On d8 there's no choice but to take. And the king, white king, is now in the ideal position, but it's black to move, and he takes the opposition. And this means that eventually this pawn will drop. If he plays king here, then king to f2, then Gukesh comes to f3. Or maybe plays pawn here. But this is a one position. Gukesh, Ding realizes it's a one position. His clock's virtually gone and he resigns. And with that, Gukesh became the youngest ever world chess champion. In this game, as in his first win in the championship, he showed a tremendous fighting spirit. He didn't just accept that this position was a draw. He kept fighting, kept giving his opponent the opportunity to make a mistake, and he made a mistake. Yeah, great. That's Gukesh, the youngest ever world chess champion. Don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe to my videos. Thanks. Bye.